Okay, Michelle, one, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. I'm really excited about today because, I mean, I know of you, and we know each other, but not well. And
Right.
I really want to, know your story. I mean, so how did you get into real estate? I mean, and like from maybe get me from college, or I don't know if college, where you went, if you did go to college, but
Yeah.
kind of give me your path to how you got into real estate and why.
Yeah, sure. So my mother was a real estate broker, but my path from college, I worked for a city manager in college in the economic development department in school. And so when I got out of college, my mother was a real estate broker. I came to Dallas, and the city manager that I worked for in Nacogdoches, Texas, was
Nacogdoches.
friends with the city manager that at the time had started running Rosewood Property Company, a family office in Dallas, Texas. So it was people and perseverance. My background was marketing and management. I went back to graduate school for accounting, but the city manager, it was people. That's how I got here. It was people and perseverance. I mean, I said, yeah, I'll go do whatever. And they said, will you go back to school at night and work full time and sit for the CPA exam? And I said, yeah, it was 1987. Just give me a shot and I'll show you that it'll be a good hire. So
So
that's how
why
I started.
Dallas? How did you get to Dallas?
My family was here. So, you
Okay.
know what? It wasn't planned. It wasn't anything. It was just what I knew. And at the time I was broke coming out of school. I was going to move back in with mom and dad and get, get my feet underneath me again,
Right.
start working and then spring off.
So what did you think you were going to do before real estate popped up? Did you have any idea? Because like I've got 17-year-old boy girl twins, and my
Yeah.
son knows what he wants to do. He wants to be in the real estate business. And my daughter has no clue. And I keep telling Kaylee, I go, Kaylee, you're not supposed to know what you want to do when you're 7. What?
Yeah, so I kind of I always thought that it would be sales oriented,
Right.
and it's probably because my mother was in brokerage and I'm a people person by nature. When I got out of school, though, in 1987, that was right after the S&L crisis. That was right, when tax reform was being made, et cetera. I always also had a good acumen for math. And so when they said, would you go back to school and sit for your CPA because this is the job that we have in hand, the city manager is telling us this girl can do whatever. I actually did payroll for all of the city staff, firemen, et cetera. I did all of the accounting as an intern all through college. So I said, yeah, I can do that. So it was really just get my foot in the door and then I'll figure out what I want to do. But real estate is where I was focused primarily because my mother was a residential real estate broker.
Okay, so where was your first move after working for the city?
Uh, Well, you mean after I graduated from college?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
worked for the city in college. I
Got it.
graduated
Okay,
from
good.
college. Yeah. So I worked full time in college for the city at the same time as going to school.
Good for you. I did
Yeah.
the same thing, but I was
Yeah.
selling vacuum cleaners and tendon bar in college.
Yeah. Well, I was painting Greek letters and sorority stuff on the side too. And stringing tennis rackets at the country club. I had a wide variety of jobs in
So
college.
always
But yeah,
entrepreneurial.
always. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me your path to your current position. Tell me what you've been,
Yeah.
where you've
So
been.
I worked for a family office at Rosewood, and I handled all of Carolyn Hunt Trust Estates office work. And from there, I left to join a guy named Jerry Fultz,
Wow.
probably late 80s, early 90s, and started pitching savings and loan work. All the banks were taking back all this property. And so I would go in and pitch property management and leasing assignments to all of the banks because I had I had a financial background because I had gone back to school, set for the CPA exam, et cetera. So I was pitching and bringing on property management and leasing assignments to Fultz Management.
I
And then
love
from
Jerry Fultz. He was
yeah,
awesome.
he was fabulous. He was an East
Yeah,
Texas guy too. So I
yeah.
mean, I really, and you know what? That was you saw the brokerage side of the business, you saw the management side of the business. That was before tenant rep came into place. Everybody was so hungry back then. And so you had a lot of fun working with a lot of young, hungry brokers, learning the business, learning different owners, learning different ways of doing things. Dealing with a lot of different financial people on what do you want to see, how do you want your stuff to be run, mean, you were bringing on all these properties and then flipping them back out, 60 or 90 days later. So it was a high volume, high transaction business at the
So
time.
did you figure out a way to make a living during RPC days? Because, those were such lean days. That was a tough time.
I was still on the, just on the paycheck side. I mean,
Got it.
I was not,
Yeah.
I was not a broker by any stretch of the matter. I was more of a corporate person back then.
Okay,
And
so what
so,
happened after Fultz?
so after Fultz, there were a lot of the Rosewood gang that left to go to two different firms back then. It was Intershop Real Estate Services or it was Regency. And so
Yes.
it was
Yes.
one or two groups. So Pat Priest, Robert Mills, Denny Alberts, Jane Modi, that whole group had left, and we all went to Intershop, which was really doing retail centers and malls across the U.S. for a private client over in Switzerland. And so we managed and leased and developed about 15 million square feet of retail across the U.S. for
And what years would that have
private
been?
REITs. So that probably was like 1993 to probably 98 time
That'd
frame.
be fun. I
Yeah,
love Denny
yeah,
Alberts too. I think he's
yeah.
awesome.
And so it was a great learning experience. We ultimately, foreign exchange rates were really good. I ran a financial services division of Intershop. And so they decided to exit the U.S. And so we worked for probably a year and a half with a group, Merrill Lynch out of New York, and sold the entire portfolio and the operating company to DRA Advisors. And so Intershop became Amerishop, but you essentially were becoming a third party affiliate of DRA Advisors managing their retail portfolio across the U.S. And so about that time, Jeff Swope had gotten my name and number from someone because he had been busy doing fee development work for Nestle.
Yes.
And he was trying to do more principal-based work. And so he needed somebody that could talk to institutions and do that partnership stuff, all the compliance-related activities. And that was my background. I had a marketing orientation, so I was good with people, but I also understood numbers, et cetera. So he and Steve Golding and Steve Midori said, come over here and let's be partners and let's do this on the principal side. So that's what I did. So I was partners with Jeff and Steve and those guys for probably 6 years, almost 7 years.
I did not know you were there.
Yeah, doing development.
Awesome.
Yeah, great learning experience because I would really say, prior, the family office side, Fultz to a certain extent because it was more bank orientation, compliance related work.
Yeah.
And then even with the private REIT side at Intershop was really more structured related work.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving over to Champion was what I'll call the cowboy era.
Yeah, you kind of got on the deal side, right?
It was on the deal side, and it really just expanded my whole And for somebody that had come from that DNA, it was uncomfortable. It was liberating. It was highly liberating because all of a sudden you really got to use your marketing acumen and your structuring acumen to try to figure out how to do deals together.
Well, and what a good team too. I mean, that team. God, best in class.
Swope was like, I called him, the fairy with pixie dust. He's
amazing.
Great marketing spin. And he gave you plenty of rope and then would just, crucify you to make sure that you were understanding decisions that you were making. Unbelievable learning experience. And really, he put on my board motivation. We had a lesson. He said,
"Oh, did he?" Story.
It was fabulous. And it was one of those lessons.
Tell me who it was. It was you.
It was one of those lessons learned that I actually wrote it on my board so I would never forget when I'm talking to someone to always think about their motivation first before my own.
Right.
And it's invaluable. Yeah.
I will tell you this. That's the first question I ask somebody in any pitch or any presentation because they'll give you the answer if you ask them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah. He was super hard, as a young 30-year-old going over there. I didn't
Yeah.
understand it.
Right.
Culturally, it was a big culture change, from going to a public company or private REITs over there.
To
And
the
so
Wild West, right?
so, so I said I call it the cowboy era, but it was hugely beneficial for me. I mean, I will always be indebted to him for what I
Yeah.
learned from him. Yeah.
Then what?
So from there, Steve Golding and I were partners. Jeff was wanting to, at the time, he was wanting to wind down, and he really wanted to get more acquisition focused. And at a time, kind of toyed around with doing a public offering. And I said, I've been in the public world before, and I don't want to do that.
I'm out.
And
Yeah,
I'm
I
out.
don't
So
blame
I
you.
mean, if you want to go the public route, that's not what I'm interested in. I really love this taste of development, and I want to stay on this side. And so I decided to embark. I actually left without knowing what the next thing was, because I was like, I just know I don't want to do that.
Hmm.
So I'm going to try to find out development. So I teamed back up with one of my old partners, Steve Golding, over here at Jackson Shaw, and started doing development work. We started partnering together doing development deals. He said, I need help. We've got a lot of ideas, but we need somebody that can figure out how to make ideas into reality. And that's what I like doing. So
So
we
what's your favorite part every day? What, like when you come to work? Is it more?
uh,
Is it creativity? Is it the relationship side? What is it that they kind of
It's
get you most
both. I
excited?
think, yeah, the people side of the business, the relationship side of the business is what I enjoy the most. But taking those relationships and creating something that doesn't exist is what's highly invigorating. It's interesting how your motivations change with the passage of time. The older I get, it's more fun now for me seeing other people getting to create those things and me helping them
I agree.
create on the
Right,
structuring side, but it
right,
took a long time to get out of execution mode or visioning mode into going to the next step,
right.
and helping others, which is how I enjoy spending my time now. I mean, now I get to work on a wide variety of things, which I really enjoy.
So are you a good delegator? Do you like to delegate, or are you?
I'm not the best. I am getting much better now at it. Yes. So I hired a CFO. I came on to Jackson Shaw initially because my background was still CFO related.
Yeah,
That's the comfort zone.
yeah,
That's
right,
kind of where you revert back.
right.
How do I bring an equity guy into this deal? How do I get lenders to loan me money on this deal?
Right.
That's
Well, you're
that's
nowhere
the
without the money, right?
yeah, that's the easy part of things to me.
Right,
It's
right.
I hired a CFO to replace me. When Steve Golding left and retired, then I took his role as president of the company. And so that was probably 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I hired a CFO. So getting out of the way was step one, and not reverting back to,
right,
okay, what are you doing? It doesn't mean that you abandon them. You still put your best team on the field every day to try to
right,
create opportunities for everyone. But
right,
first step was moving out of the way. I mean,
right,
recognizing you've got talent and letting
right.
those other people grow.
Right. Like, so, I mean, I think one of my favorite things, well, one, it's so hard to build a good team, but when you have a good team, I actually really enjoy delegating because
Yeah.
you kind of watch the team grow. Like, but so like, do you have like a business philosophy or any way that you approach business that someone would benefit from knowing? I mean, I know what I've always heard about you is you're wicked smart, very relational, and very driven. But I mean,
Yeah.
is there like what's your principle in business maybe?
It's transparency and no surprises. Um, I mean, I don't want anybody, if there are problems coming up or we know of something, get it out in the open. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's be good fiduciaries. You know, Not every transaction is going to work based on an Argus run or a performa.
It's a guess.
Just,
Argus
it's a
runs a
guess.
guess.
It's a guess. So if
I
there are,
love hearing that. I feel the same way. It's the hardest lesson I learned growing up, growing into
yeah,
business is when you have a problem, drag it out on the table, tell everybody about it, and start dealing on it.
If we're in the ditch, let's all figure out how to get out of the ditch.
Right. Let's face it.
And I guess if you've gone through multiple recessions, you know that there are ditches coming. You just got to figure out how to avoid all the potholes. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
no,
think the sooner you
yeah,
face it, the better off you are.
yeah,
So, okay,
yeah.
now we're in the ditch. Give me a problem that you've dealt with that's kind of changed, that you learned a life lesson, like a
Being
bad deal or a bad
Yeah,
relationship.
being over leveraged in 2008, going to CMBS, not having someone on the other end of the phone that you could walk through a deal with, understanding, the big lessons learned on that. We got greedy in
What?
2008. Yeah,
Well, we all started trying to use leverage to
yeah,
make returns. And I will
yeah.
tell you, it's kind of amazing because your story is so parallel to mine, because I started in 86. I came to
That's-
Dallas in
Yep,
86. So I went through all the same things you did.
yeah.
And
You just look
oh,
younger than me. I'm
no,
glad.
no, I don't. Oh, 07, 8, 9, though, the one thing I learned is I loved my bases, but my leverage was a problem
Yeah, leverage
in,
was a problem.
in the wrong part, having the
Yeah,
wrong.
it's interesting. Our greatest problem going into 8 ended up being our greatest asset coming out of the recession. We had way too much land on our books.
Mhm.
We'd taken down large land tracts, 120 acres in Maryland, 115 acres on 121, you know, big chunks of land all over the place that at the time we thought were fine. But
Sure.
during the recession, all of a sudden carrying that crap, and it just wasn't,
So
the
what do
thing
you
that,
do about land now? You approach it differently?
well, we try to be a little bit more measured. But I tell you what, right now, it's been the institutional nature of what's happened with industrial, particularly, has made things tough. I mean, you're competing with all product types now. I mean, who would have thought we would have been spending what we're spending on dirt these days? Um, when industrial is competing with residential, it's competing with everything now.
Right. And like when you look at a piece of dirt, are you looking, I mean, a 5-year cycle, or are you trying to get out of that? What's your time? Do you have a time horizon you want to try to develop out to get your basis out?
On the land side,
Yeah.
yeah. So on the industrial, we like to try. We run all of our stuff on 5 years.
Okay.
So that's what we run everything on.
Yeah, and I've been trying to do JVs where I can. It's easier to do with office. I don't
Yeah.
think you can do it today with industrial with what's going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really creative on we've got disciplines within our firm where we can do a variety of product types. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily been in vogue, but I mean, one of the things, we've got a residential line of business, we've got a industrial line of business, and then we have a select service hospitality line of business. This time around is really interesting because COVID I mean, it's a tale of two cities. I mean, as strong as everything has been on the industrial side, it's polar opposite on the hospitality side. And so we're dealing with two completely different dynamics going on right now.
Do you have an optimistic view um, of hotels going forward? Do you think we're going to get through it this coming year and it'll be behind us, or do you think it's going to be a long slog?
I think it's going to take longer than everybody thinks to get us back on rate. I mean, here's the reality. We have 5 hotels. We have very limited partners in our hotels. The primarily are all internally. Our hotels, for the most part, we've got 1 in Scottsdale, 3 in Frisco Colony area, and then we've got 1 that we just opened up in downtown Fort Worth. All are performing better than what we thought when Armageddon hit in
Right.
March.
Yeah.
But rates have been suppressed far worse than what we thought. We're seeing, though, glimmers of hope just because everybody is stir crazy to get out. Our stuff in Scottsdale has been cash flowing the whole time, but we've got some extenuating circumstances. We've had a large group in there since day one that's been there and is going to renew through March. So, I mean, we've held 85% occupancy the whole time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Our stuff in Cascades out on 121 has been harder hit because business traveler out there with JP Morgan Chase and Liberty Mutual and
Right, they're not coming to work.
Nebraska Furniture, they're not coming to work yet.
Right.
So they're not traveling. But the transient guy is.
Right.
the entrepreneurial firms, they're starting to travel more. They're
Have
going,
you
you gotta
traveled yet?
yeah, I have.
Me too. Me too.
I have.
I'm traveling Thursday. I mean, I've been
And
doing it. I'm pretty comfortable.
I have to say the first trip I had to go to a city council meeting in Las Vegas in June. I was not comfortable. That was also during the riots.
Right.
So I had to have a driver and all that kind of stuff. But since then, yeah, I've been traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Good.
have to. It's my business.
Me too. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm over. I'm done. Let me tell you, I'm looking forward to putting Zoom in my rearview mirror.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I
Me
mean?
too. Me too.
So what do you think a good leader, a leader of a business, what does good leadership look like? I mean, how do you try to lead your business? What's important?
You know what? I'm a big believer in servant leadership. I'm also a big leader, a big proponent of trust, which means, you know what? You've got to be able to debate, and anybody in that room needs to be able to challenge anybody else in that room to come up with the best ideas.
Right.
So it, I am not going to have the best ideas every time, but I encourage people to challenge and have debate. I
Right.
mean, really be constructive about it. And then I'm a big believer in transparency and being a good fiduciary. I mean, we're only as good as our partners and our lenders and our relationships are. And so you've got to you've got to constantly communicate, over
I,
communicate.
I think relationships are built in
Yeah.
bad times, right? Because
Yeah.
people
No, everybody, yeah,
show
it's how
people
you
you
behave.
care.
Well, and
Right.
yeah, it's everybody behaves great during good times. It's how are you going to behave during bad times?
Right. And do you find, like in uncertain times like we've been through, that you're like when you're like a little bit uneasy about what's going on, you don't know what's coming, does that put you into action, or are you
Yeah.
contemplative, or what? How do you react?
It actually makes me, I'm a fighter, but I guess, that's the one thing that, going back to Jeff again, he knew that the harder he was on me, the more motivated I got.
Right.
So the more difficult times are,
Right.
the more you just want to bust through the wall to get to the other side. But that's what motivates me. It's not one
Everybody's
side.
motivated differently, right?
Everybody's motivated differently. So during bad times, I generally have a tendency to hunker down and just push as hard as I can.
Right.
And yeah.
One thing that surprised me about COVID is, like, because everybody in our team took it a little bit differently. Like,
Oh
there were
yeah,
some people that were totally in fear. There were some people that probably were too flippant about it.
yeah.
Probably the middle is the right. But I've been, I had to learn to address it individually instead of as a company, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Have you been through
Yeah.
anything similar?
Yeah, that was tough. That was the toughest part. That was the toughest part, especially when you wanted people back and you wanted people together. You had to be mindful that everyone's situation is not the same. I mean, I have a young lady who has a 2-year-old. I mean, she's still adjusting to motherhood, daycare. I mean,
Right.
everyone's situation is not the same. And really, I think fundamentally, though, the tenet was you cared about your people, but you had to
Right.
understand individual circumstances and you couldn't address it all the same way.
Right.
I
And
mean,
so,
that was the reality.
how have you kept your team positive kind of through the unknowns? Has that been
I can't say that initially what we did was we did weekly calls, we did Zoom calls, right? Where we laid out our business plan and we said, okay, here's our business plan. Here's what our business plan was this year. Here's where we have potholes.
right?
Here's where we're in the ditch right now.
Right.
Here's how we're trying to work out the ditch. And we started communicating along every asset, uh, every business segment. We told it all every week. And
Right.
we measured every week, and and people would ask us questions. Well, what about this? And we said, our goal is to keep all of our employees. We said, our goal is to keep all of our employees, to keep you health and safety, and to let you know that we're going to do everything in our power to push through this. Where are our challenges? And we're going to tell you. where our challenges are so that you can start looking with us. Here are our 5 biggest challenges. And
That's
here's the
awesome.
timing of those 5 biggest challenges. And
Right.
here's what we're doing to address those 5 big. And so they knew up front, and it kind of created at least where they felt like they were safe.
Right.
Because they were
Well, I
seeing
mean,
all of their colleagues get laid off. They were seeing them take pay cuts. They were seeing them being furloughed. They weren't sure, and we said, look,
right.
our number one goal is to push through this, and our team is our most valuable asset. So we're going to do everything we can. But here are
Okay.
the challenges.
So has this taken longer than you thought?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, me too. I thought it'd be 4 or
Yeah.
5 months and we'd be through it.
Yeah. Me too.
And what's your view of next year?
We've already done forecasting and projections for next year. I mean, I think it's still going to be a little sluggish, but I mean, our business plan for next year is going to be pretty flat. We're not showing, we were able to get 3 deals through the goal line in the 3rd quarter for next year. So we've already got
for you.
stuff on the board for next year, and we're trying to get 2 more on the board, but even with what we have, we're okay. So, I mean, that's been communicated. But it's been, our people are still, we had 80% of them here today doing birthday stuff for one of our coworkers, but masked up, spread out.
Right.
But it's, it's still, you're still not, we normally do a big Thanksgiving deal. We're not going to do that just because we're wanting to make sure, what, if you're wanting to go home for Thanksgiving, we want to make sure that we're not the ones creating a question mark before you go home to see folks.
So, I would say,
how are you keeping your people motivated? How are you keeping?
I'm telling you, it sounds like I've been in your huddle, but same way you're doing it. We've just been really honest and open and transparent. We told everybody that they were good, that their jobs were good through year end, and then we reevaluate.
Yeah.
But our goal was to keep everybody. We had 1 employee take another job, but other than that, everybody has stayed. We've been very transparent. We focused on what we can work on and being realistic about what we can't. Like our leasing activity on office, anything that doesn't have a time horizon on it, that's got no sense of urgency, there's just not a lot going on. And try to be relational with our tenants. If people have been a good tenant and they needed some relief, I didn't put them through a lot of hurdles. I wasn't predatory, trying to get more term. I just worked. And I'm hoping that pays off later. But, just saying, I think you and I have very similar philosophies. It's just being really open and try to stay positive. I mean, this hasn't been that bad, right? It could have been a lot worse.
I mean, this is far worse than 2008, though. I mean, this is like not even in the same vein.
Right.
I mean, we didn't have as many problems going. We didn't have any issues going into it. The hospitality side and our restaurant side is what has been. I mean, there's just you can't do anything. PPP solved problems for this year, but it's not helping for next year.
Right. So, like, if you were your younger self, what would your recommendation or thoughts be for somebody just getting into our business? Like, what you went through or anything any advice you can give. People are just starved for advice, right? Can you imagine being a young person trying to get in the real estate business right now? It's brutal. Because, I mean, we're just trying to hang on to who we have, right?
Yeah. You know what? I think for me personally, I would have taken more risk on myself earlier on. It wasn't in my DNA earlier on. I wish I would have taken more risk earlier on because guess what? I didn't have the same level of obligations or, all those things that life and age change. I would have taken more risk on myself earlier on. And I would have continued. If you're not in an environment where you're constantly learning, put yourself into an environment that you're constantly learning. And to the extent that you ever quit learning, it's time to move on because you grow by learning. And don't be afraid of mistakes because that's how you learn.
Right. I think, don't you think you learn more from making a mistake than,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I tell you what, though, you have had a incredible
Oh, I've
list
been
of
lucky.
really good people that you've
Yeah.
learned from.
I've
Like,
been really lucky. I've been really lucky. I mean, a lot of life is luck. And
right,
I've been really blessed that, God's put me in the path of great leaders and mentors that really gave me the opportunity to learn. It also takes assertiveness and proactiveness. I'm highly competitive. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, but at the same time, you mix those ingredients with the right people, and it's fabulous.
right. I would say, like, if people ask me, like, nobody would hire me. I kept trying to get a job when I first came to Dallas in
Yeah.
'86, and I didn't know the city very well. So I couldn't get a job. So I went and started on my
What was
own.
your well, what was your background?
Well, I was working for my dad in a residential real estate company, and we were doing like storefronts and stuff. We had commercial, but it was nothing like Dallas.
Yeah.
And and so I kind of, my advice to people is get with good people where you can learn from the right people, like
Yeah.
not focus on the money, but get in the right position. But like the risk piece, I totally agree. I think, get yourself into that position if you're built to take risk, right? You have to
Right.
be a person.
Yeah.
I know a
You
lot of
got
people that just risk is like getting a root canal. They don't want any interest in, but I respect risk, but I enjoy it. You know what I mean? I really
Yeah.
think the most fun
Yeah.
about our business is figuring it out.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that I learned. I did learn that at Champion. I didn't realize how much pressure was put on you, right? When you're in that position. That was the first time, with guarantees and completion, environmental and carve outs and all that kind of stuff. And Jeff would always, I, there's it switches, right? You think about it differently when it's you on
Right.
the line. But I
Right.
also it's not necessarily, it's mitigated risk because you've done a lot of studying on your deal. You've done a lot of research on your deal. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't have a high degree of conviction that your deal makes sense.
Okay, so one of the things when I switched from being a broker to a developer,
Yeah.
for years it took forever to get brokers to not look at me as a broker that's developing, but as just a developer.
Oh yeah.
Because they kept thinking that I was going to go try to steal their tenant, or I don't know what they were thinking, but they looked at me like a broker
Yeah.
instead of a
Right.
developer. But I can tell you, in '08 and '09 was one of the first times I looked back at being a broker going, that's not a bad deal. Because, we've got
A
debt
lot of
and
risk.
relationships and all this risk. And I wouldn't change anything. I love what I do. But there's a lot to be, it's like when you're making the soup, there's a lot in there that
Yeah.
relates to your personal risk,
Yeah,
right?
but it's highly it's invigorating to the creativity piece of it is what's I
Oh, I
mean,
love it.
I used to think that the creativity stuff was just on the structural side. No, that's just a piece of it. You get to use a whole nother creative piece of your mind when you're thinking about, going to municipalities or working with architects and engineers or working with site planners or, how are you going to get it really built? How are you going to be part of the landscape? How are you going to be part of the community?
Right.
What are you going to do? Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Okay. Okay. So, and have you gotten more conservative, or are you like, as you like you've been doing this a long time. You've had wins and losses. Like I find myself getting a touch more conservative every year in how I approach stuff.
I think
You know,
that's
it's
with I
weird,
think
and I,
that's
I
with
don't ever
birthday.
want to. Right, and I don't ever want to be to the point to where your team is going, because I've seen like Jerry Fultz. I love Jerry, but Jerry got to where in the end I so looked up to him, but he got bitter in the end. He kind of got unhappy,
Yeah.
and I think you always have to be able to be out front taking risks to keep leading your people. You agree with that?
Yeah, that's where our team comes into play because yeah, I do think with every birthday becomes a little a little, you're a little less bulletproof maybe, but at the same time, you've got to be somewhat of an encourager so that you continue to motivate your guys or girls to go and find opportunities, right?
Sure.
And you know that how you pencil it day one is not how it's going to pencil at the end. You just got to keep working it, keep working it, keep working it, keep working it, keep peeling it back until you get something. The interesting thing is to give, what I have learned is that you can't have all of the answers at day one. And that was part of, that was a little bit of a change in my mentality, because I did come from a financial bean counter background, right?
Right.
I needed to understand the math first. And so I needed to say, okay, look, back of the napkin is going to have to work on the front end.
Sure.
And then refine it as you go. That's a little bit of a a departure for someone that comes with my background.
Yeah, but I think that's an advantage, actually. I think, because I'm not, people don't think of me as having a financial background, but I actually love the numbers. I don't want to run them. But I mean, I'm always in there running stuff in my head to where I'm pretty close to where they end up. But so let me ask you this. Do you ever see, do you ever see you retiring or quitting? I mean, like quit, like where you go play golf and.
No, I love spending time in Colorado, but I have to tell you, even if I'm in Colorado, I find myself calling and working just because I like it. Or I go and look at what's going on in the area. Well, what land parcels? Where are they doing stuff different? I mean, I always feel like I'm always curious, but I don't know that you turn that off.
Right.
I think that's just part of your DNA.
So you're going to keep going. You're just going to maybe get more balance and keep going.
Yeah. I mean, do I want to go fly fish? Yes. Do I want to go watch sunsets? Yes. Do I want to go hike some? Yes. But do I want to quit? No.
Exactly. I think quitting sounds boring to me.
No, me too.
I mean,
me too. Me too.
I mean, I like golf and hiking and I like all of that, but I don't like any of it more than I like work.
Yeah. Well, it's the
creating.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm gone too long, I just start missing people.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you excited about looking ahead? Like view of Dallas, business, life, whatever.
I'm excited about seeing we've got some really great young people here, and I'm excited about seeing them grow. Our team actually has come together extraordinarily well this year, even amidst all of this noise. And so I'm excited to see where this takes off, and I'm actually excited about next generation of leadership. I'm really excited about that.
Right. And like trying to find your replacement?
Well, I mean, I think we've already got the mixing of that already internally. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got highly talented people within our firm that have already stepped up.
That's awesome.
And are stepping up, which I think is fabulous.
They
want to. And my goal is to grow them to do it.
Right.
What can I do to help you?
I think this stage in my life, the people side is the most rewarding too, and the relationship side. But I love trying to give people opportunity and then watch them grow in it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You're chairing the Real Estate Council at a time similar to when I chaired it. I chaired it during the last downturn. And so you're having to go through this as well. So I did it, I think 7, 8 or 8, 9 is
so
when
in the middle of the mess.
Right in the middle of the mess. And so it was about bringing people together. Now your situation is uniquely different because you can't bring people together. Our situation was nobody had any money. Everybody was broke. The financial crisis, global financial crisis. So it was, and we were trying to figure out, oh crap, how long does the cash that we have last? And so Holland and, the whole crew there knows that it was, you were trying to bring people together and go, okay, you know what? But you had people really wanting to get together and do stuff and make things happen and reinvest in the city because, it was a terrible time.
Well, the thing that's been weird about this, one, so much enjoyed it. I was a little worried about it because I mean, I'm really big about making a commitment and doing a good job. I wanted to do a good
Well,
job.
you've done great with all the technology stuff. I mean, you had to bring people together in March. You were one of the first ones that, did that whole
Thank
series
you.
on Ring
Yeah.
Central and bringing people together and talking, and people just wanted to hear and really commiserate.
Well, right, because everybody was looking for information, but
Yeah.
it's been weird, like no fight night, no giving gala.
Yeah.
But it's been a really rewarding trip. It has. And I'm going to stay plugged in because I always looked at Trek from the outside in, looked at it, and I always thought it was such a quality organization. Not that the other ones aren't, but I was members and involved in the other ones. And I just am I'm a bigger fan of Trek now that I've been involved than before. So, well, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I mean,
This was fun.
yeah, I appreciate it. I think, this kind of stuff is important. People want to it's hard for them to get access to someone like you that has had your experiences. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and thanks for all your involvement and everything you've done for Trek.
Well, Bill, thanks for your leadership, because I know that this has been uncharted territory, and your positivity and your commitment to the organization and your rolling up the sleeves and let's get after it no matter what comes through in spades.
Thank you.
So thanks for sticking with it. I mean, you've done an exceptional job during a very challenging period.
I appreciate it. Thanks for
So,
today.
yeah, likewise. Thank you.